Before Silicon Valley, before Bezos or Musk or even Rockefeller, there was Henry Ford, a name that doesn't just belong in history books. It built them. He didn't invent the automobile, but he reinvented everything around it. The assembly line, the $5 workday, mass production, consumer culture. He made cars affordable. He made wages livable. He made America move. Ford's Model T wasn't just a car, it was a revolution on wheels. A machine the average worker could finally buy, drive, and take pride in. And with it, he didn't just transform the auto industry, he transformed the country. Rural families could explore cities. Small towns turned into suburbs. The middle class was born on four wheels. To the world, Henry Ford was a genius, a hero, a titan who took industrial chaos and turned it into cold, clean efficiency. Factory lines followed his rhythm. Workers answered to his standards. Presidents praised him. Headlines worshipped him. But genius often casts a long shadow. Because the power Ford gained wasn't limited to metal and machines. He began reshaping more than factories. He began reshaping people's lives, their routines, their beliefs, their behavior. If you worked for Ford Motor Company, your paycheck didn't come free. It came with strings, expectations, surveillance, obedience. The same mind that streamlined manufacturing also sought to streamline morality. And while the textbooks love to celebrate the cars, they skip what came next. Because behind the curtain of progress, Henry Ford wasn't just building automobiles. He was building something far more dangerous and far more permanent. Henry Ford didn't just build cars, he built a way of life. And if you worked for him, it didn't stop at the assembly line. His influence extended into your home, your habits, your beliefs. In 1914, he made headlines by announcing the $5 day, more than double the average wage. But there was a catch. To earn it, workers had to submit to Ford's sociological department, an internal watchdog agency that monitored every aspect of their personal lives. Investigators made surprise visits to workers' homes. They checked for cleanliness, alcohol use, even how the children were raised. Immigrants were expected to assimilate quickly. No native language, no old customs. English classes were mandatory. The Ford ideal was an obedient, sober, Americanized worker. And if you didn't fit that mold, you could be demoted or fired. This wasn't just corporate overreach, it was social engineering. Ford also built company towns, entire communities where he controlled housing, food access, entertainment, and even the churches. In places like Fordlandia, his failed rubber plantation in the Amazon, he attempted to build an industrial utopia in the jungle, only for it to collapse under cultural resistance and rebellion. To Ford, efficiency wasn't just about machines, it was about people. He believed society, like a factory, should operate smoothly, with no room for defects. And that belief, that obsession with order and conformity, would soon spill into something even darker. Because while he was policing his workers in America, he was preparing to publish something that would poison minds across the world. In 1919, Henry Ford bought a failing weekly newspaper in Michigan called the Dearborn Independent. On the surface, it looked like a vanity project, another way for Ford to speak directly to the people. But behind its modest masthead, the paper became a vehicle for something far more insidious: hatred. Starting in 1920, the Independent began publishing a series of anti-Semitic articles titled "The International Jew, the World's Problem." Over 90 installments ran over 2 years, filled with conspiracies, false accusations, and grotesque stereotypes. Ford claimed Jews controlled global finance, manipulated the media, and threatened true American values. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't implied. It was printed in black and white and distributed through Ford dealerships across the country. The reach was enormous. Ford's name gave the publication instant credibility. Thousands of readers believed every word, simply because it came from the man who built the Model T. The articles were later compiled into pamphlets, translated into multiple languages, and sent around the world. When asked why he published them, Ford said, "The only statement I care to make about the protocols is that they fit in with what is going on." He was referring to the infamous Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a proven hoax document used to spread anti-Semitic propaganda. Ford wasn't just echoing hate, he was amplifying it. And that amplification would travel far beyond America. Because across the Atlantic, a young man with a mustache was listening. While Henry Ford's words were poisoning American discourse, they were also crossing oceans. In Germany, the anti-Semitic pamphlets from the Dearborn Independent were translated and circulated by extremists. Ford's name became a symbol, not just of industrial success, but of ideological alignment. One reader in particular took notice: Adolf Hitler. In 1925, Hitler published Mein Kampf, his political manifesto and roadmap for Nazi ideology. And in it, he made a shocking statement. Among all global figures, only one American was mentioned by name: Henry Ford. Hitler called him a great man. It wasn't a passing comment. It was praise rooted in admiration. Hitler viewed Ford as a pioneer, not only of automotive innovation, but of cultural purification. Nazi newspapers and propaganda outlets reprinted sections of the International Jew. Ford's name carried weight in Third Reich circles long before war broke out. In 1931, a Detroit newspaper reporter asked Hitler about Ford. His response? "I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration." Ford later denied personal responsibility for how his writings were used, but the damage was done. His ideas had already found new life in a regime built on hate, violence, and genocide. This wasn't just influence, it was complicity through ideology. And Ford's connection to Nazi Germany wouldn't end with admiration. It would soon become formalized, in front of cameras, under a swastika. In July 1938, Henry Ford received a medal, not from the US government, not from an industrial society, but from Nazi Germany. The award was called the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest honor the Nazi regime could bestow on a foreigner. Ford wasn't just receiving a plaque, he was accepting recognition from Adolf Hitler's inner circle, at a time when Germany was already persecuting Jews, militarizing aggressively, and threatening global peace. Photos from the ceremony show German diplomats presenting the medal on Ford's 75th birthday. It was delivered in Dearborn. American flags stood beside swastikas. Nazi representatives smiled as Ford accepted it, calm, composed, without a word of protest. Ford later claimed he had no idea what the medal represented. His defenders said it was just a diplomatic gesture, but the truth is hard to deny. Hitler admired Ford. Nazi propaganda used Ford's writings. Ford Motor Company's German subsidiary, Ford Work, continued operations deep into World War II. And while Ford never visited Germany during the war years, his name remained influential. It appeared in Nazi speeches, newsreels, and literature. One Nazi leader reportedly said, "We look to Ford as a symbol of true American values." The man who built the Model T had become a tool for the Reich. He never returned the medal, never issued a formal condemnation of Hitler. And even as war broke out, Ford's past words and actions remained uncorrected. The line between industrialist and icon had blurred. And now it was inching towards something far darker. While Ford was receiving medals from fascists overseas, his empire at home was becoming something just as chilling. His workers weren't celebrating, they were fighting to survive. In the 1920s and 30s, labor conditions inside Ford plants were brutal. Grueling hours, unsafe machinery, near impossible quotas. But what truly set Ford apart was the ruthlessness with which he crushed dissent. He didn't just oppose unions, he waged war against them. Ford's secret weapon? A man named Harry Bennett, head of the Ford Service Department. Officially, it was security. In reality, it was a private army, packed with ex-boxers, thugs, and ex-cons, hand-picked for loyalty and brutality. They spied on workers, followed organizers home, beat employees in the parking lot. Inside the plant, fear kept the machines running. Outside, the message was clear: challenge the system and you'll be crushed. Then came May 26, 1937, the day it all exploded. Union organizers from the UAW gathered at the River Rouge plant. They weren't blocking the gates. They simply handed out flyers. But as photographers clicked their shutters, Bennett's men attacked. The beating was savage. Men were bloodied, bones broken. One was thrown down concrete stairs, and it was all caught on camera. The press dubbed it the Battle of the Overpass. The images made national news. Ford denied everything, but America saw the truth. He wasn't just fighting unions, he was fighting the very idea of worker rights. And the world was starting to realize, beneath the shine of the Model T, was blood on the factory floor. The River Rouge plant was Henry Ford's masterpiece, a 5-story industrial colossus stretching over a mile long. Raw materials came in one end, iron ore, rubber, glass, and fully assembled cars came out the other. It was the first fully integrated factory in the world, a marvel of production, a monument to Ford's genius. But for the workers inside, it was something else entirely. The noise was deafening. Machines roared like thunder. The heat was unbearable. Men collapsed at their stations. Others lost fingers, eyes, or worse. Quotas were punishing, and always rising. Foremen patrolled like prison guards. There were no unions, no protections, no safety net. And if you were black, things were even worse. Ford publicly bragged about hiring African Americans, but inside River Rouge, they were placed in the most dangerous jobs: blast furnaces, foundries, paint rooms. They earned less, faced more abuse, and had zero chance of promotion. This wasn't a factory, it was a system of control. Racial divisions were used to keep workers from uniting. Fear replaced trust. And Harry Bennett's men ensured that anyone who resisted was silenced. To the public, River Rouge was a triumph of industry. But to those who lived it, it was a fortress of exploitation. A place where progress came at the cost of dignity. And no one, not the press, not the government, not even Ford's biggest fans, could ignore the cracks forever. Because beneath the polished chrome and roaring engines was a legacy built on silence, steel, and suffering. Despite the violence, the propaganda, and the Nazi medal, Henry Ford's public image remained mostly untarnished. He was still celebrated in headlines, still praised as a self-made American hero. Politicians sought his endorsement. Business schools quoted his principles. And the public, many of whom owed their livelihoods to the cars he built, clung to the myth. Even as the Dearborn Independent continued pushing hate into American homes, Ford's reputation as an innovator overshadowed it. For years, he faced almost no serious backlash. His wealth insulated him, His fame protected him. And the media, dazzled by industry and patriotism, rarely asked hard questions. It wasn't until 1927, after years of pressure, lawsuits, and growing condemnation, that Ford finally shut down the newspaper. In a carefully worded statement, he claimed he was unaware of the content and apologized, but never took real responsibility. By then, the damage had already been done. The International Jew had been reprinted worldwide. Its ideas had been seeded across continents. Closing the paper didn't stop the spread. It just stopped the source. But America was ready to forgive. The Depression had begun. Jobs were vanishing. And Ford's factories, for all their flaws, still offered work. The country needed a symbol of progress, and no one was ready to tear down the man who gave it to them. So the headlines moved on, and the darkness stayed buried beneath the roar of the assembly line. Today, Henry Ford's name still appears in classrooms, museums, and documentaries, but most of what we learn about him is carefully curated. The Model T, the assembly line, the $5 workday, a genius, a patriot, an icon. But the rest, it's edited out, quietly, strategically. Textbooks rarely mention the Dearborn Independent. Museums gloss over the Nazi medal. Tour guides at the Henry Ford Museum talk about innovation, but skip the Battle of the Overpass, the River Rouge brutality, the labor spies, the anti-Semitic pamphlets distributed through dealerships. Even Ford Motor Company's World War II involvement in Nazi Germany is treated as a footnote, if it's mentioned at all. It's not that the facts aren't known, they are. Historians have documented them extensively. Photos exist. Quotes are verified. Legal records are available. But history has a filter, and that filter tends to favor the legacy over the truth. Because Henry Ford doesn't just represent a man, he represents progress, industry, the American dream. To confront his darkness means questioning the very foundation of modern capitalism. So instead, the world built a cleaner version, one you can hang in a museum, one you can name a highway after, one that fits neatly into a lesson plan, without uncomfortable questions. But the truth was never erased, just ignored. So how do we remember Henry Ford? As a man who revolutionized the modern world? Or as someone who used that power to spread hate, crush workers, and cozy up to fascists? The truth is, it's both. Ford changed the course of history. He made cars accessible. He redefined manufacturing. He helped birth the middle class. His innovations reshaped cities, economies, and culture. Without him, the 20th century would look very different. But alongside that legacy sits another, a man who believed in social engineering, who published bigotry under his own name, who refused to return a Nazi medal, who built factories that ran on fear, pain, and silence, who saw control, not compassion, as the path to progress. And that's what makes his story so haunting. Because history loves heroes. It loves invention, but it struggles with contradiction, with complexity, with the idea that someone can be both a pioneer and a problem, a genius and a threat. But that's the truth of Henry Ford. He didn't just build machines, he built a myth. And that myth still rides alongside every car that bears his name. Because legacy isn't just about what you create, it's about what you leave behind when the engine stops.